The room felt like it was holding its breath when the lawyer started reading Grandpa Henry's will. I'd barely had time to process that he was gone, my rock, the man who'd built Carver Media from nothing into a $150 million empire, when everything flipped upside down. The lawyer's voice was steady, almost too calm, as he said, "To my granddaughter, Anna Carver, I leave my entire estate, including full ownership of Carver Media and the family man." My chest tightened. I was 28, not some kid, but still running a media giant. It hit me like a freight train. Then my mom Evelyn stood up. She's 52, all sharp edges and designer heels, and her hand clamped onto Victor's arm like she was staking a claim. Victor's my stepdad, 48, slick, and way too comfortable for a guy who'd only been in the family 2 years. Mom's voice cut through the silence, firm and cold. "From this moment, Victor's taking charge of the company." I blinked, my brain scrambling to catch up. Victor? The guy who'd spent the last year smirking at me over dinner, dropping little digs like, "Anna, stick to your little blog ideas. Leave the real work to the adults." I looked around the room. My aunts, uncles, even the board members Grandpa had trusted. They just sat there, stone-faced. No one said a word. It was like they'd all known this was coming, like Mom had rehearsed this power grab while I was still crying at Grandpa's bedside. My hands curled into fists under the table. This wasn't just about the company. This was personal. Victor leaned back in his chair, that smug grin spreading wider. "Let's be real, Anna," he said, his tone dripping with fake concern. "You're smart, sure, but a $150 million empire? That's a man's game. You're not ready." Mom nodded, her eyes locked on me like she was daring me to argue. "It's for the best," she added. "Victor's got the experience. You just mess it up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, the woman who'd spent my whole life telling me I'd never measure up, was trying to steal what Grandpa had given me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, unfazed, and kept reading. "Anna Carver is the sole heir, effective immediately." Mom's face twitched, but she didn't back down. "There's got to be a mistake," she snapped. "Dad wouldn't do this." "Oh, there's no mistake," the lawyer said, his voice flat. Henry was crystal clear. That shut her up for about 2 seconds. Then she turned to me, her lips tight. "If you think you're keeping this, Anna, you're delusional. Pack your stuff and get out of our house." "Our house?" I almost laughed. I tilted my head, meeting her glare. "You mean Grandpa's house?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "The one he left to me? Maybe you should check that will again, Mom." Victor chuckled, like I'd just told a cute joke, but I saw the crack in his confidence. Mom's hands clenched at her sides, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. "You're making a fool of yourself," she hissed. "This isn't over." I didn't flinch. I'd expected her to fight dirty. I just didn't think she'd sell me out this fast. The room stayed quiet, every pair of eyes bouncing between us like they were watching a boxing match. And right then I knew. This wasn't just about money or power. This was war. A week before Grandpa Henry passed, I was sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand. His fingers, the ones that used to scribble notes on napkins and sketch out ideas for Carver Media, felt so fragile now, like they might crumble if I squeezed too hard. The machines beeped softly in the background, and his breathing was shallow, but his eyes still had that spark. He looked at me, his voice raspy but firm. "Anna," he said, "you're the only one I trust with this. Don't let them take what I built." I didn't know what to say. My throat was tight and I just nodded, trying not to cry. Grandpa wasn't like Mom. He never saw me as a disappointment. When I was a kid, he'd let me tag along to his office. Me, this awkward 12-year-old with braces, trailing behind him while he barked orders at editors and producers. He'd sit me down with a stack of old newspapers and say, "Read these, kid. Figure out what makes a story stick." Mom would roll her eyes when I'd come home babbling about headlines and deadlines. "Stop filling her head with nonsense, Dad," she'd snap. "She's not cut out for your world." But Grandpa didn't listen to her. He kept me close. By the time I was 20, I was shadowing him at board meetings, taking notes while he negotiated deals. He'd quiz me after, stuff like, "Why'd I push that contract, Anna? What's the angle?" I'd fumble at first, but he'd grin and say, "You'll get it. You've got the knack." He taught me how to spot a liar in a pitch, how to turn a failing magazine into a cash cow. It wasn't just business to him. It was a legacy, and he wanted me to carry it. That day in the hospital, his grip tightened just a little, enough to pull me out of my thoughts. "They'll come for it," he whispered, his eyes flicking toward the door like he could see Mom and Victor waiting out there. "Evelyn's too greedy, and that husband of hers, he's worse. Promise me you'll fight." I swallowed hard. "I promise," I said, my voice barely audible. He smiled, weak but real, and let go of my hand. I didn't know it then, but that was his goodbye. Back in that tense room after the will reading, with Mom glaring daggers and Victor smirking like he'd already won, it all clicked. Grandpa hadn't just given me the company. He'd trained me for it. Every late night poring over profit reports, every time he'd made me pitch him a fake story idea, it was for this. He knew Mom would try to claw it away, that Victor would slither in and take over if he could, and he'd made damn sure I was ready to stop them. I straightened up in my chair, the lawyer's words still hanging in the air. Mom thought she could erase me from this, but she didn't get it. Grandpa had seen something in me she never bothered to look for. He'd spent years building Carver Media, fighting tooth and nail to make it a name people respected, and he wasn't about to let it fall into the hands of someone who'd rather cash out than carry on. That's why he chose me, not her, not Victor, me. The weight of it settled over me like a storm rolling in. Scary as hell, but electrifying too. I wasn't just some kid stumbling into a fortune. I was the one Grandpa had picked to protect his dream. And as Mom's voice started up again, sharp and demanding, I tuned her out. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I had his words in my head, and that was enough to keep me going. The lawyer's voice was still echoing in my head, soul air effective immediately, when Mom snapped. "This is absurd," she said, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. She stood there, arms crossed, her face all tight lines and fury. "There's no way Dad meant this. He must have been out of his mind when he signed that will." Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table like he owned the damn place. "Let's not kid ourselves," he said, flashing that oily smile I'd grown to hate. "Anna, you're what, 28? You've got no business running a $150 million media empire. You'd tank it in a month." I felt my pulse kick up, but I kept my face blank. "Funny," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Grandpa didn't think so." Mom's eyes narrowed and she took a step closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Don't get smart with me," she hissed. "You've never run anything bigger than a lemonade stand. Victor's been in this game for decades. He knows how to handle Carver Media." "Decades?" I almost laughed. Victor was a mid-level ad exec before he latched on to Mom. Hardly the mastermind she was painting him as. The lawyer cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. "Evelyn, I assure you, Henry's wishes were explicit. Anna owns everything, the company, the mansion, the whole estate. He flipped a page in the will like it was just another Tuesday for him. Mom's jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might crack. "Then he made a mistake," she spat, "and we're fixing it. Victor's taking over, end of story." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice low but steady. "Grandpa left it to me, not you, not him." Victor chuckled, shaking his head like I was some clueless kid. "Sweetheart, come on," he said, his tone dripping with that fake warmth he loved to throw around. "This isn't about pride. It's about what's best for the company. You're not equipped for this. Let me handle it. You can still enjoy the perks." "Perks?" I stared at him, letting the word hang there. That's when it hit me. They'd planned this. Mom and Victor had probably been whispering over late-night glasses of wine, plotting how to shove me aside the second Grandpa was gone. They didn't just want control. They wanted me out of the picture entirely. My stomach twisted, but I kept my cool. "So that's the play?" I said, locking eyes with Mom. "You think you can just erase me from my own inheritance?" She didn't flinch. "You're out of your depth, Anna," she said, her voice ice cold. "And if you're too stubborn to see it, then you're done here. Pack your bags and get out of our house." Our house. There it was again, that entitlement she wore like a crown. I tilted my head, a slow smile tugging at my lips. "You keep saying our house," I said, "but last I checked, Grandpa's name was on the deed, and now mine is. You might want to double-check that will, Mom, because I'm not going anywhere." Her face went white, then red, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or slap me. Victor jumped in, his charm slipping just a little. "Listen, Anna, be reasonable," he said, leaning closer. "Hand it over to me for now, at least. I'll keep things running smooth. You don't want this kind of pressure, trust me." "Reasonable?" I crossed my arms, staring him down. "What I don't want," I said, "is you thinking you can waltz in and take what's mine." The room went dead quiet. My aunts and uncles shifted in their seats, avoiding my gaze. The board members, 3 stiff suits Grandpa had hand-picked years ago, just watched, their poker faces giving nothing away. Mom took a sharp breath, her hands balling into fists. "You ungrateful little," she started, but Victor put a hand on her arm, cutting her off. "Let's not burn bridges," he said, his voice smooth again. "Anna, we're family. We can work this out." "Family?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "Family doesn't stab each other in the back," I said, standing up. "You want to work this out, fine, but it's my company, my house, my call, and I'm not handing you a damn thing." Mom's eyes burned into me, pure venom. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have no idea what you're up against." I met her stare, unflinching. "Neither do you," I said. Victor's smile faded, and for the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. They thought I'd fold, that I'd buckle under their threats and their smug little plan, but they didn't know me, not the way Grandpa did, and I was just getting started. 2 days after the will reading, I woke up to my phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. Texts from friends, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and a dozen emails from the Carver Media PR team. I rubbed my eyes and opened the first one, a forwarded headline from some sleazy tabloid. "Inexperienced heiress set to sink Carver Media empire." My stomach dropped. Another one popped up. $150 M. Gamble, can Anna Carver keep the lights on? By the time I scrolled through the third, industry insiders predict collapse under new CEO. I was wide awake, my hands shaking. This wasn't random. I'd been in the media game long enough, thanks to Grandpa, to know a smear campaign when I saw one. Someone was feeding these vultures lies, and I had a pretty good guess who. I threw on a hoodie and grabbed my laptop, pulling up Carver Media's stock stats. Down 8% overnight. I paced my room, Grandpa's room technically, with its big oak desk and shelves of old journalism books, trying to think straight. Then my phone rang. It was Lisa from PR, her voice tight. "Anna, we've got a problem. The board's freaking out and there's talk of an emergency meeting." "Slow down," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Who's behind the leaks?" She hesitated. "We're not sure, but it's bad. Someone's saying you've got no experience, that you're just a spoiled kid who lucked into this. They're quoting internal sources." Internal sources. My jaw clenched. Victor's face flashed in my mind, that smug grin he'd worn when he told me to hand over the reins. Mom was ruthless, but Victor? He'd play dirty without blinking. I hung up and started digging. It didn't take long to find an email trail buried in the company server. Someone using a burner account had been tipping off reporters, leaking fake stats about my failed projects. I didn't have any failed projects. I'd been freelancing for Carver Media since college, pitching ideas that actually made money, but facts didn't matter when the story was this juicy. Then I saw it. One email CC'd to a personal address I recognized, Victor's. That bastard wasn't just gloating. He was orchestrating this whole thing. I needed a lifeline. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped on Clara Bennett. She was Grandpa's best friend back in the day, a hardcore journalist who'd broken some of the biggest stories in the 90s. She'd retired years ago, but she still had pull, and she hated Mom's guts after some old family drama I never fully understood. I dialed her number, my heart pounding. She picked up on the second ring, her voice gravelly but warm. "Anna? Hell, it's been a while. What's up?" "They're trying to bury me," I said, cutting straight to it. "Mom and Victor. They're tanking the company's rep to force me out." Clara let out a low whistle. "Evelyn's still a snake, huh? Figures. And that husband of hers slimy as they come. What's the damage?" I ran through the headlines, the stock drop, the board's panic. She didn't interrupt, just listened, and when I finished, she said, "All right, kid. You're not going down without a fight. Meet me at my place in an hour. Bring everything you've got." I grabbed my laptop and drove to Clara's brownstone downtown, my mind racing. She opened the door with a coffee mug in hand, her silver hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Sit," she said, pointing to a worn leather couch. I dumped the email screenshots and stock reports on her coffee table. She skimmed them, her eyes narrowing. "This is amateur hour," she muttered. "Victor's got no finesse." She tapped the email with his address. "We can use this. Flip the script." "How?" I asked, leaning forward. Clara grinned, a spark lighting up her face. "We go public. I've still got friends at the big outlets, real journalists, not these gossip hacks. We leak the leak, show Victor's the one screwing with Carver Media. You do an interview, tell your side. People love an underdog, Anna, and you've got one hell of a story." I nodded, adrenaline kicking in. "What about the board? They're ready to vote me out." Clara shrugged. "Let 'em squirm. Once we turn the tide, they'll fall in line. Victor's betting on you folding. He doesn't know you've got Henry's spine." She was right. Grandpa had faced worse than this in his day. Lawsuits, rivals, even a hostile takeover. and he'd come out on top every time. I wasn't about to let him down now. By the time I left Clara's, we had a plan. She'd call in favors, I'd prep for the interview, and we'd hit back hard. Mom and Victor thought they could drown me in bad press, but they'd just handed me a weapon. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Clara's brownstone smelled like old books and strong coffee as we sat there, plotting our next move. The laptop was open between us, glowing with those damning emails tying Victor to the media leaks. I was buzzing, half rage, half hope, ready to bury him and Mom with this. Clara sipped her coffee, her eyes flicking over the screen. "This is gold," she said, tapping a finger on the table. "But we can do better. Way better." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She set her mug down, leaning in close like she was about to spill the juiciest gossip of the century. "You ever wonder why Victor's so hell-bent on Carver Media?" she asked. "Why he married Evelyn in the first place?" I shrugged. "Money, power, same as Mom. He's a climber." Clara shook her head, a sly grin creeping across her face. "Oh, it's more than that. Buckle up, Anna, because this is gonna blow your mind." I sat back, my stomach doing a weird flip. "Okay, spill it." She took a deep breath, like she'd been holding this in for years. "Victor's not just some random sleaze who latched onto your mom," she said. "He's Henry's son. Your grandpa's kid from way back, born out of wedlock, never acknowledged." My brain short-circuited. I stared at her, mouth half open, waiting for the punchline. "What?" I finally managed. "You're saying Victor's my uncle?" "Yep," Clara said, popping the pea like it was no big deal. "Back in the 70s, Henry had a fling with a secretary at the company. Mary something, she got pregnant, had Victor, and Henry paid her off to keep it quiet. Didn't want the scandal tanking his marriage or his reputation. Victor grew up knowing who his dad was, but Henry wouldn't give him the time of day. No inheritance, no name, nothing." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Kid's been festering about it ever since." I felt like the room was spinning. Victor, my stepdad, the guy who'd been smirking at me across the dinner table for 2 years, was Grandpa's secret son? My uncle? "How do you know this?" I asked, my voice shaky. Clara smirked. "I'm a reporter, Anna. I dig. Found Mary's obituary a few years back. Mentioned a son, Victor Grayson. Did some math, tracked down an old coworker of hers who spilled the beans. Henry told me bits and pieces himself, late one night over whiskey. He regretted it, but he never fixed it." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to process. "So Victor married Mom to what? Get back at Grandpa?" Clara nodded. "Exactly. Evelyn was his ticket in. She's greedy, sure, but Victor? This is personal. He's been gunning for Carver Media his whole life, thinking it's his birthright. Marrying your mom was step 1, taking it from you is step 2. My head was a mess, but the pieces started clicking. Victor's obsession with the company, the way he'd wormed into Mom's life so fast after her last divorce. It wasn't just ambition. It was revenge. And now he was using her to finish what he started. "That's insane," I said, dropping my hands. "He's insane." Clara laughed, short and sharp. "Welcome to the family, kid. But here's the kicker. We can use this." I looked at her, my mind racing. "Use it how?" She grabbed a notepad and started scribbling. "We've got the emails proving he's sabotaging you, right? Now imagine this. You confront him privately. Tell him you know who he is, Henry's bastard son. threatened to go public with it, he'll back off fast. Guys like Victor hate the spotlight when it's shining on their dirty laundry. I chewed my lip, thinking it over. It was risky. Victor was a loose cannon, and Mom would lose her mind if she found out. But it could work. "What if he calls my bluff?" I asked. Clara's grin widened. "He won't! I've got proof. Old letters from Mary to Henry begging him to meet Victor. Scanned them years ago for a story I never ran. One call to my editor friend and it's front page news. Victor's whole game collapses." I sat there, letting it sink in. This wasn't just about saving the company anymore. It was about turning Victor's own past against him. My stepdad, my uncle, the guy who'd spent decades plotting to steal Grandpa's legacy. And now I had the upper hand. "Okay," I said, nodding slowly. "Let's do it. How do I play this?" Clara tossed the notepad aside and grabbed her phone. "First, we set up the interview, get your story out there, clean up the mess he made. Then you corner him. I'll dig up those letters, have them ready as backup. You walk in there, calm, Anna, like you're holding all the cards. Because you are." She paused, her eyes locking on mine. "Henry picked you for a reason. Victor's got no claim, blood or not. This is your fight." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. Grandpa had warned me they'd come for it. He just never told me how deep the betrayal ran. Victor wasn't just a gold digger. He was a ghost from Grandpa's past, clawing his way back. And Mom? She was either in on it or too blind to see she'd married her own half-brother's kid. Either way, they'd underestimated me. I stood up, adrenaline pumping. "Call your editor," I said. "I'll handle Victor." Clara raised her mug like a toast. "That's my girl. Let's burn this bastard down." I didn't smile. I was too wired for that. But inside, I was ready. Victor thought he could take me out with a few leaked stories. He had no idea what was coming. The boardroom at Carver Media smelled like polished wood and old money, but the air was thick with tension when I walked in. It was the emergency meeting. 2 days after Clara dropped that bombshell about Victor, and the same day my interview with her editor friend was set to air. I'd barely slept, running on coffee and pure spite, but I was ready. The long mahogany table was packed with board members, gray-haired suits who'd been loyal to Grandpa, or so I'd thought. Their eyes followed me as I took the head seat, the one Grandpa used to fill. I could feel the doubt radiating off them. Mr. Daniels, a wiry guy with a permanent frown, spoke first. "Anna, we've got a crisis on our hands," he said, tapping a stack of papers. "Stocks are down, investors are jumping ship, and the press is tearing us apart. We need stability, now." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "I'm aware," I said, "and I've got it handled." He snorted, exchanging a look with the woman next to him, Ms. Pierce, endled. "You're 28. This isn't a startup. It's a $150 million empire. We're not convinced you're the right fit." I'd expected this. They weren't wrong to worry. The leaks had done damage, but I wasn't about to let them steamroll me. Before I could respond, the door swung open, and in strode Victor, Mom right behind him. He was all swagger, suit crisp, like he'd already won. Mom's face was a mask of cold fury, her lips pressed tight. Victor cleared his throat, flashing the room a politician's smile. "Glad you're all here," he said. "Let's cut to the chase. Carver Media needs a leader with experience, someone who can steer us out of this mess. I'm stepping up." He didn't even glance at me, just kept talking, pacing like he owned the place. "I've got the know-how, the connections. Anna can stay on as a figurehead to keep the family name front and center, but I'll handle the real work. It's what's best for the company." Mom nodded, stepping forward. "He's right," she said, her voice sharp. "Anna's in over her head. We can't risk everything Dad built on her inexperience." The room murmured, heads nodding. I let them talk, let Victor bask in his little moment. Then I stood up, slow and deliberate, and every eye snapped to me. "That's an interesting pitch, Victor," I said, my voice calm but carrying. "Funny thing, though, I remember you saying something different a couple days ago." His smile twitched. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, tilting his head. I glanced at Clara, who'd slipped in quietly and was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. She gave me a tiny nod. "Showtime." "You told me I should hand over the company because I'm not equipped," I said, stepping around the table. "But that's not all you've been up to, is it?" I pulled a folder from my bag, copies of those emails, and slid it across to Daniel's. "Take a look. Victor's the one who's been tanking Carver Media, leaking lies to the press, scaring off investors, all to push me out." The room erupted in whispers as Daniels flipped through the pages, his frown deepening. Victor's face went red. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're making this up." I didn't flinch. "Am I? That private email address? The one you used to tip off the tabloids? It's registered to you. We traced it. You're not as slick as you think." Miss Pierce grabbed the folder, scanning it, her jaw tightening. "This is damning," she muttered. Mom shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "Anna, stop this! You're just trying to smear him because you're scared." I turned to her, letting a slow smile creep onto my lips. "I don't need to smear him, Mom. He's doing fine on his own. But since we're airing dirty laundry, let's talk about Victor's real game." I paused, locking eyes with him. "You're not just my stepdad, are you? You're Henry Carver's son, his secret kid from way back. This isn't about helping the company. It's about settling a score." The boardroom went dead silent. Victor froze, his mouth half open, like I'd just punched him in the gut. Mom's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" she hissed, but her voice wobbled. I kept going, my tone steady. "Grandpa had a fling years ago. Victor's the result. Born out of wedlock, shut out of the family. He married you to get close, Mom. This whole time, he's been plotting to take what he thinks he's owed." Daniels leaned forward, staring at Victor. "Is this true?" Victor stammered, his cool cracking. She's lying." "There's no proof." Clara stepped up, tossing a stack of scanned letters onto the table. "Oh, there's proof," she said, her voice dry. "Letters from your mom, Mary Grayson, to Henry, begging him to meet you. I've got the originals if you want to test the ink." The board members scrambled for the letters, passing them around, their murmurs turning to outrage. Victor's hands clenched into fists, his eyes darting to Mom like he was begging her to save him. She just stood there, trembling, looking at him like she'd never seen him before. "You're Henry's son?" she whispered. He didn't answer, but the panic in his face said it all. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, cutting through the chaos. "Enough," he barked, glaring at Victor. "You've been sabotaging this company, your own father's legacy, just to spite him. You're done here." He turned to me, his tone softer. "Anna, you've got evidence. What's your call?" I straightened up, meeting every gaze in the room. "Victor's out," I said. "He's got no claim. Blood doesn't mean squat when you're a traitor. I'm CEO and I'm staying." Miss Pierce nodded. "Time to vote," she said. One by one, hands went up, unanimous. I was in. Victor slumped in his chair, defeated. Mom grabbed his arm, her voice a furious hiss. "You'll regret this, Anna." I smiled, cool as ice. "I doubt it. Security's waiting outside. Don't trip on your way out." They stormed off, Mom's heels echoing down the hall, Victor trailing behind like a kicked dog. The boardroom settled, and Daniels gave me a grudging nod. "You've got guts, Carver," he said. "Let's hope you've got the brains to back it up." I didn't blink. "You'll see," I said. Inside, my heart was pounding, but I kept it together. This was my win. Grandpa's trust, Victor's lies, all of it laid bare. They'd come for me, and I'd crushed them. A year later, I stood behind a podium in the Carver Media Auditorium, staring out at a sea of faces, employees, reporters, even a few board members who'd doubted me back in that brutal first meeting. The spotlight was hot, but I didn't mind. I adjusted the mic, my hands steady, and started talking. "When my grandpa, Henry Carver, left me this company, people said I'd fail," I said, my voice ringing clear. "They called me too young, too green, said I'd run his $150 million empire into the ground. Well, here we are." The crowd shifted, leaning in. I could see Clara in the front row, her silver hair catching the light, giving me a small, proud grin. "It wasn't easy," I went on. "I had to fight. Not just the doubters, but my own family. My mom and my stepdad. Turns out my uncle tried to rip this place out from under me. They leaked lies, turned the press against me, even pushed the board to vote me out. But I didn't back down. And neither did the people who believed in me." I paused, letting that sink in. "We turned it around. Stocks are up 15% from last year. We launched 3 new digital platforms, and our subscriber base doubled. Carver Media isn't just surviving, it's thriving. And that's not because of luck. It's because of preparation, grit, and knowing what this company really stands for." Applause broke out, loud and real, and I let myself smile. It felt good, damn good. After the speech, I stepped off the stage, shaking hands and dodging cameras. Clara caught up with me in the hallway, her coffee mug still glued to her hand. "Not bad, kid," she said, nudging me with her elbow. "Henry'd be grinning ear to ear right now." I laughed, brushing my hair back. "Thanks, Clara. Couldn't have done it without you." She shrugged. "Nah, you had it in you. I just lit the match." I thought about that as I walked to my office, Grandpa's old space, now mine. The desk was still there, scratched and sturdy, piled with my notes instead of his. Mom and Victor were long gone. After the boardroom blowout, they'd slunk off. Mom to some overpriced condo downtown, Victor to God knows where. I heard he tried pitching himself as a consultant, but no one bit, not with his name tied to that scandal. Clara's article had sealed it. "Carver heiress exposes stepfather's betrayal and his secret past." The headlines buried them, and I hadn't heard a peep since. Sitting at that desk, I looked out the window at the city skyline. A year ago, I'd been terrified, out of my depth, blindsided by betrayal, clinging to Grandpa's faith in me like a lifeline. Now, I was the one calling the shots. I'd proved them wrong, not just Mom and Victor, but every suit who'd smirked at me, every reporter who'd written me off. Age didn't matter. Experience you could build. What mattered was showing up, fighting back, and turning a legacy into something. I leaned back in the chair, letting out a slow breath. This was my empire now, Grandpa's dream, my reality. And I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot.